Hello, everybody, and welcome to Autism and Entertainment, an informative panel right here at WonderCon at home. We got a wonderful group. We're here to examine activism. We're here to examine autism in entertainment, how autism fits within the storytelling, how it fits within the storytellers themselves, how autism connects with filmmakers, with the crews, with actors, with the audience. And we've got a great set of folks here to discuss that. So I'm going to introduce everybody right now, and stay tuned. We're going to have some fun. We have a trio of Pixar filmmakers, and I'm very excited about that. We've got Erica Milsom who is the director of Loop. See, I don't know where you guys are for anybody else, but she's way down there. The director of Loop, a fine Pixar short. We've got Bobby Rubio, who is our story trust on Loop, as well as wrote and directed Float.
Yeah.
And Krissy Cababa.
Yep.
Is that right? All right. She was the producer of both Float and Loop. We've got Joey Travolta, who's center square for me. I don't know where he is for you. And Joey is, amongst many other things, an actor, etc., but the head of Inclusion Films. And he's done a great deal of really phenomenal productions that deal with autism and special needs folks, and including Through the Heart of Tango, a documentary about the art of connection, and Hire Me, pretty inspiration pieces. We've got Diana Elizabeth Jordan. Give a wave. There we go. Diana is, she spent decades helping out and coaching and directing folks on the spectrum and people with learning disabilities and the like, and works with Meet the Biz, which is a very wonderful company that deals with, makes inclusive industry workshops and events all the time. And then Dani Bowman up there in my upper left corner, from Danimation Entertainment. She's produced 9 award-winning animated shorts. What was that?
Animated short films.
That's what I was going for. And the Dani Academy, which I was reading up a great deal about, very autism positive animation workshops and remote learning, which is doggone important right now. Right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
We've had some amazing history of autism in the community of animation. Some shining examples would be Rain Man, Temple Grandin, the Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. Currently, we've got Loop, another film called Cody Lee, and the Holly Brown Robinson Peets family is a pretty good representation of that. There have been some notable people throughout entertainment that have been either autistic or on the spectrum. Everyone from, say, there are words that Prince or Miles Davis were part of that group. Then we have a fairly significant fan base that follows along with everything. It's pretty interesting that way. You guys have any thoughts on the current standing as we're going with how autism is represented?
Well,
I guess I do. Oh, sorry.
continue. Go ahead.
Start us off, Erica.
Okay. I think, it's funny because I think we're coming up on a major change, it feels like, in terms of autism representation in media. There's all the people on this panel are creating work that has representation and that influence of the autistic voice on their work. But I also, I've been watching the TV show Everything's Going to Be Okay. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's fantastic, and one of the main characters is autistic, and a lot of the storylines are so beautifully interwoven in her particular response to her teenage experience. And I just think that's it's a part of her character, but it's not the only thing that we're talking about in her story. And I think that's a really powerful change that's going on throughout media, that sometimes when you see people finally get to share their voices, their voice becomes a part of the larger dialogue and doesn't have to be always the only thing it's about is their difference. it's about their similarities and their differences. So anyways, I feel like it's a really cool time, and that media is changing because autistic people and their allies are helping to push it forward.
And I also think we're seeing more authentic representation, and that's what's really important to me, both as an actor with a disability and as an ally for actors on the spectrum. Yes, I do think in the past year or so, we have seen much more authentic casting of, as opposed to an actor who is not on the spectrum playing a role, more authentic casting. And I think that's really important too, that not only are we seeing more representation, but the representation is authentic. And I think that must continue to happen. I think if you're going to show characters who are on the spectrum, regardless of the story, you need to cast artists who are on the spectrum. And artists behind and in front of the camera. My last film, the first film I did, I had artists in front of and behind the camera who are on the spectrum because they're talented. And that's why, it was, I consciously go for diversity, but the most important thing is they're talented artists, and I want them to have an opportunity. So that's why I cast. That's how I cast. But showing that diversity in the films I work on is also important.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I've been watching Lock and Key on Netflix, and Cody Bird, who is a person on the autism spectrum, he's on it, and he plays a character on there, and he's brilliant, and he has the talent to do it, and I think it's amazing to see that there are opportunities out there. I mean, maybe not as much, but hopefully with the years coming soon, there are hopefully more to come.
I'm going to jump in here. Joey Travolta Inclusion Films, we train adults that are neurodiverse in filmmaking. And I've been doing filmmaking camps for children with autism for the last 14 years. And the adult program, we train them to work not only in front, but mostly behind the camera. And just recently, we finished Carol of the Bells, which was a feature film where 70% of the crew was neurodiverse, the majority of them on the autism spectrum. And it was very exciting to see, because that's been my goal. But not only the doors that I'm trying to open, they're opening now. Just recently, we were involved with Delivering Jobs. And when they shot that, they approached me because it was Autism Speaks, Best Buddies, and Special Olympics that formed this PSA about what the workplace would work with all people with disabilities. And they hired 6 of our folks to work on it. And from there, 3 of them worked on the new series Special, and Dr. Phil hired 5 of our folks as well. So the doors are opening. And
Great.
it's pretty exciting. There's a lot of stuff that's lined up that because of the pandemic, it's kind of held us back, but the doors are opening, and it's taken a long time. So many times I had pitched to different executives at different studios about hiring folks that are neurodiverse, and it's changed. Before it was, well, how do I talk to somebody who's got a disability? How do I talk to somebody who has autism? And my answer was the same way you're talking to me. We're all the same. There's no difference. That's the way I was brought up. Everybody is equal. Everybody is the same. But the light at the end of the tunnel is doors are opening, and characters are reflecting what society is and what it looks like. So I'm excited about that.
Yes, we need to continue to be included in the media and entertainment roles, I realized that sometimes it is difficult for us to be social and follow the social cues in the workforce. But all we need is a little help with that, and we are usually good. Other times we can work from home. We are really good about following schedules and deadlines. That's a great thing about working in the media entertainment industry.
Okay, so my Pixar trio.
Yes.
The great triumvirate of short makers up there. Tell me about Loop and Float and themes of autism and what inspired those shorts and what was the degree of difficulty for you guys to get those made?
Maybe I'll start this one off.
Yeah.
The degree of difficulty is actually quite high because these two shorts were made under Pixar's umbrella of Spark Shorts. And Spark Shorts is kind of a new program for Pixar. It was developed with the goal of giving more brand new filmmakers a chance and giving the crew a chance to stretch too. Pixar is such a big studio that feature films, take a lot of resources, and then a lot of times talented folks don't get the opportunity to direct or to produce or to write or to anything because there's just so few chances because we only make 1 or 2 feature films a year. So the Spark Shorts was a way for smaller crews and to be able to tell their stories and to get those out there. And both Bobby and Erica have very, very different inspirations for their stories. So I'll let them talk about that.
Bobby, why don't you go first? Because you're the first one up there. Float.
Oh, okay.
Hey, but both of these are available on Disney Plus right now, right?
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
They
I
both
was
are on
skimming through the other night. Beautiful collection of and creator introductions as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Really
yeah,
nice.
Make sure if you watch the Spark Shorts to watch the little making of, the behind the scenes extras. They're really special.
Very special, very interesting.
Thank you. I mean, so if you saw it, and then you know that Float is a very personal story for me. My son is on the autism spectrum, and I wanted to approach it from the parents' point of view, and I wanted other parents to see themselves in the short, and I wanted them to know that they weren't alone. I mean, because you're put in a situation that you weren't planning on, and then you find yourself accepting it and loving your child for who he or she is, and that is what Float is about. And the way I was trying to interpret autism, I wanted it to be kind of more metaphorical. So the child is floating. And I think with that, by doing that, I also made it so it's more about difference. And I wanted the audience to come up with their own interpretation of difference. For me, it meant autism, but for another person, it could mean something else. The difference, a child of being different could be, I don't know, their gender difference or their social economic difference or sexual orientation difference. And so, but for me, and the original inspiration was autism. And so I dedicated it to my son and to all families with children that are different.
It's such a beautiful film.
Thank you.
And it's funny, yeah, to piggyback on Bobby's. So when I originally came up to talk to the leadership about my short idea, I was like, hey, I want to work on a short that features a child with a disability. And at the time, I didn't know it was going to be a child with autism, but I was like, I wanted, and they were like, oh, Bobby's already doing one about that. And I was like, oh, no, and you feel like, oh, I don't want to have the same idea. And it's hilarious because you look at our two films and I don't think you could find two more different, takes on a topic than Bobby's Float and Loop, but yet I love Float so much. And it was so funny when I went up to kind of pitch my idea and I said, oh, I want to make a film about a character who has a disability. and has a different way of communicating with others. Jim Morris, the president of Pixar, was like, oh, well, Bobby's making one like that. And I was like, oh no, you know, you get worried because you think you're going to make the same movie. And I feel like our movies are so different and yet complementary. To me, it's a really powerful thing to have two stories that are takes on the same issue, but from such different points of view. And I feel really lucky that we get to be this handshake, you know, together, that we released in a similar timeline and get to say that. And so for me, Loop was honestly, I have like a background working with kids and adults with disabilities. I mean, for a really long time. I've been doing this. I realized the other day, I was like, oh, when I was a teenager, I used to go out and do volunteer gigs where my mom was a special ed substitute teacher, and she would take groups of kids on field trips, and I would just go with them on the field trips. And I always loved it. Like, I like being in the space of neurodiversity. I've realized this is just a powerful in the world. I find it really fun to be around people who are not all like me. So, and to face those challenges that come with that in terms of understanding that everybody's not like you, and like, how do you connect? So when I was thinking about the film to make, I wanted to make something about figure out what that would mean, because there's a lot of reasons that people don't speak. You know, it's not only autism. But I went out and I spoke with actually a Pixar group of parents called Quirky Kids, to sort of just say like, okay, well, I know I want to have 2 kids on a canoe. I want to have 1 kid who uses a speaking device. And then I want to kind of like find out why for the storytelling purposes. And folks talked about the different ways that their kids are different in terms of speaking. And the parents who had children who are autistic really started to uncover that along with communication, there's also this sensory difference, this way of experiencing the world that can have like a very powerful effect on the way that you're experiencing sensory input. And that just for me immediately clicked as like a storytelling thing in film that would be really, really exciting for all of the filmmakers to take on in every level at Pixar. Pixar is such a collaboration across artists, and to have both the physical difference of like sensory experience with stimming and that kind of stuff, as well as the communication difference, the voice difference, the audio difference, the visual difference. Like, I knew that we would have a great time trying to figure that out. So that was sort of where the origins of Loop, it's kind of this additive thing where like I had this little idea about 2 kids who couldn't connect because they had a difference in the way that they communicated. And then to kind of unwind the why of that, we got really specific. You know, we decided not to make it metaphorical. We wanted to make it really concrete. That one character was a girl who was autistic and non-speaking, and that the other character was not autistic and did use speaking to communicate most of the time, and they'd have to find their way to each other.
Great.
Krissy, anything?
Yeah, and I think, well, for me, it was a joy to be able to work with both Bobby and Erica. They were such different films, and they approached the films in different ways. So it was really a joy for me to be able to work with them. And, you know, through Erica's film also, I learned so much. You know, I don't have any personal experience with autism. So for me, it was a learning experience, which I really cherish. And the other thing too is that we've had such great response from both of the shorts. People who have seen them have really related to them and have really responded to them. And that's been really, really lovely. It's been nice to hear folks out there of all stripes really feeling something for both Float and Loop. And that's been really a joy.
May I ask, were you able to cast actors who had disabilities?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, Erica, go ahead.
Yes, that's such a great question, Diana. We actually, for me, it was an absolute essential point that though our character was non-speaking, she would vocalize, and that we would need to, because vocalization, the way that people who vocalize speak or communicate is so powerful. And if you're around it, it becomes its own language. It's like an intimate, different language. And I was like, we absolutely have to find a an actor who is a non-speaking autistic girl. And it's funny because that kind of freaks out casting people because they're like, you know, that's sort of deer in the headlights. Like, how are we going to do that? And for me, because I've had years working with, like, I just volunteered a lot with art centers in the Bay Area. So I have known a lot of non-speaking artists, visual artists. And I just kind of had that, you know, people who are artistic are often multidisciplinary. They often have that capacity to move from one discipline to another. And I don't think people with disabilities are any different. There is a power of expression that you can find in any kind of artist. So I just sort of started, I was like, hey, help me write a casting call, like your normal casting call. I don't really know how to do that. So I wrote one, and I think, Krissy, you were not on, Michael and I, our previous producer, and I wrote it up. And then I just sent it to a bunch of art centers and like recreation centers and dance centers that I knew had people with disabilities in them, and said, hey, you know, let me know. And we ended up casting, we didn't call people in for casting calls. We went out to the locations where people were and just kind of listened and hung out with them. And that was, our whole process was a process of like adapting the normal Pixar process to just work for autistic people, you know, like we ended up finding Madison Bandy, who is our actress. She's a voice actress, and then we have another voice actress who plays Marcus. Her character's named Renee. And she was so fun to work with. I mean, she has an amazingly expressive and like cut through kind of voice. Like the voice that you hear it and you're like, oh, I can't not pay attention, right? So
yeah,
that's what you want in a voice actor. You know? She just happens to not use words very often.
Yes, look at me. I have autism. I have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's of fine arts in animation and a master's in global strategy and leadership. And I have a company, and I am okay with it.
Good. You should be okay with it if you put that much time in the
That is
school.
so awesome. Yeah.
Joey,
So cool.
Yes.
can you tell me about, by the way, we have a mutual friend, Bill Dion, so I've been brutally
He's my
aware of
electrician,
your
And he
activities for the
he was a
last 20
teacher.
years.
Yeah.
Good guy. What is the mission of Inclusion Films, and how did you get that company started in the first place?
Well, I was a former special ed teacher, but when I started producing and directing films, I was getting young people out of top film schools that didn't know their way around the set. And I learned from being an actor what a producer did, what a director did, what the grip, I learned it all from I had this bird's eye view. And about 10 films into directing, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I had like a group of folks that could come from day one when we break the script down, budget it, schedule it, cast it, right all the way through post-production. And I wasn't working with special needs folks at that time. But later on, we were doing classes and camps for kids, and 2 parents with children with autism approached me and said, would you be open to doing classes for special needs kids, because there's nothing for them. This is back in 2003, 2004. So we started, I said, absolutely, I have the space, I have the teachers, and we started doing this. And what I found was, it was the process of making the film where all the education takes place, because you learn collaboration, you learn communication, and these are kids that weren't a part of any kind of group. So now you're throwing them together and having them make a film or do a short or do voiceovers, learn everything that's involved with it. So in a meeting with the regional center, they were saying there's going to be a tsunami of young people coming to the workplace with autism, and there's nothing for them. And I pitched them the practical film workshop, and they went nuts over it. And I said, the problem is you really need a feature film to do it. And I was hesitant to pull the trigger. But then while I was doing the film camps, I found out that whether it's a 10-minute film, a 30-minute film, or a full feature length, the process is the same. And that's where the communication, all that education, the collaboration, that's where it all takes place. And when you're finished, they always talk about outcomes. Well, the outcome is the film that you do. You know, that's forever. And did I answer the question?
Pretty well, yeah. I think you did good.
But it just, you know, it all came from that, from filling a void, filling a need. And young folks on the autism spectrum, they just love television. They love characters. My theory, going back to when I was a teacher, my theory was, if kids can watch TV for 5 hours and not get bored, if you can make your teaching as interesting as TV, wow, you got something. You can grab their attention. But now you're teaching them a craft. Not only are they learning soft skills, they're learning technical skills. They're being introduced to everything. And then the outcome is the script that you develop that becomes like your thesis film. And so we've been doing that since 2007. And it's now, as I said before, we've done documentaries like Through the Heart of Tango and other documentaries as well. Normal People Scare Me, we had done years before. And I mean, I love what I do. And this is a great forum for our young folks. And they take to it and they can do it, like, especially with editing and camera and stuff like that. They just take to it. And we've had a lot of success, especially in the editing field with the young folks with autism.
All right. Dani, can you talk about Danimation Entertainment and especially your autism positive workshops and remote learning? Because I can't imagine anything's more important right now.
Okay, sure. I started Danimation Entertainment when I was 14 years old. I've always wanted to start an animation company, but then Joey Travolta and I first met when I was 14 years old at the time when I started Danimation. And he saw what I was doing with animation, so he invited me to teach animation to his students at his workshops. At age 16, I started traveling around the country teaching animation to youth with autism at his film camps. Soon after that, I started teaching animation at my own camps. So now I've taught at over like 10 locations at different camps.
And I'm so proud of you for that.
Thank you,
the first
Joey.
time I met her, I was so impressed with her. And you know what? Someone had talked before about opportunities, and that's what it's about. It's about giving people opportunities. And I think the very first opportunity for Dani was I had her animate a children's book that I wrote with John Martin. What was the name of the book?
The book was called Dani and Goliath.
Dani and Goliath.
Yes, yeah. It was first published in 2010, followed by its sequel called Richie and Goliath.
And when she first did it, I mean, her big thing was anime. And when she sent the first draft of all the drawings, the eyes were a little scary for children's books. And I had to tell Dani that, you know, you got to dial it back. They have to be more, you know, soft and inviting. And she didn't get it in the beginning, but then she did, and she did a beautiful job. She illustrated 2 books for us. And
I understand. And then what I did is that I also published more books, like Really, Really Like Me by Gretchen Larry, who is also on the autism spectrum. And I also did the PLA All-Stars Christmas Carol, which is my adaptation featuring my original characters. And then Rajalika Speak, which is about a talking horse who changed his life when he learned to talk. And an adaptation of a 6 animated short film that I premiered at Comic-Con known as Somebody Needs You, which featured the legendary voice actress June Foray. And the movies, I've also premiered 9 animated short films at San Diego Comic-Con. Would you like me to say the list?
No, that's okay. We can see it in your bio right now.
Okay, it's Mr. Raindrop. Oh, never mind.
So just it sounds more impressive if you just say 9 award-winning animated shorts.
I mean, that's 9 award-winning. That is impressive.
See, that's a good thing. Diana, I want to get to Meet the Biz, but Joey just brought up a really good point. Autistic people see things from a different perspective than people without autism. How do you guys communicate, or what are those tricks of communicating to make sure that everything is clearly communicated and understood on both sides?
Go ahead.
Anybody?
Anybody?
Was that for me?
That's for anybody.
Well, I mean, the great Temple Grandin, I mean, she said it all. She thinks in pictures and very, very visual. So if you look at, well, pictures worth 1,000 words, what do moving pictures do? When you can take those images and then make a story out of it. And so many of the young people with autism are great at drawing and making things, but it's the telling the story, learning how to build it with a beginning, middle, and end. And the characters, because a lot of times they don't have the life experiences. When you write something, they always say, write about what you know. And a lot of this knowledge is book knowledge. So they have to get out and experience it. And filmmaking is the best way to do that.
Filmmaking is the best way, I would say. So with filmmaking, it's animate, and also it's the same thing with animation. You just really have to know who the character is and what is their character's flaws from beginning to end. What is the character's goals? And basically, in order to win your audience's attention, it's really about getting what the character really wants and how does the character adapt to the new normal from beginning to end. It's like, and what is the moral? What is the something that the audience will come across? Something that reflects to real life.
Yeah. I think it's also really important not to go into a situation with preconceived notions, but just allow yourself to experience and learn, because the only way you do is by learning and by trial and error and say, oh, that didn't work, let me try this. But I think if you go into a situation with an open mind to say, I'm going to learn and to ask. You know, yeah. I mean, you know, I know, like, you know, sometimes I ask it, you know, what is your preference? What do you like? You know, I remember meeting someone and my costume designer on my film, who was on the set and said, it's hard for me to look people in the eye. So I said, okay. So, I mean, and I make a lot of eye contact, but if you tell me it's hard for you, you're not comfortable with me looking you in the eye, and I know that, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, and say, okay, what is comfortable for you? What is the best way that I can work with you so you can be what do you need to do your job the best way? What do you need from me? How can I make it an equitable situation for you working on the set? And the only way I can find that out is to ask and not assume. You know.
Diana, sorry. I wanted to back that up, Diana, because I feel like as a director.
Start that again.
Sorry, okay, great. Are we recording? Okay, great. So Diana, I just wanted to back that up because I think it's a really great point that every new actor I direct needs a different strategy to get to the place that's emotional and poignant and storytelling. And it's interesting because like I've had neurotypical actors who I was super unsure of how to get them places and a little bit like afraid because maybe they're young guys who think they're really cool and you have to make them cry. You know, like there's these things with actors as a director and with crew members, like every person needs a different type of direction. And so I feel like it was interesting working with Madison our actor Luke, because I was like, okay, her lines, like I wrote emotions for her lines, but not necessarily dialogue, right? Because she's non-speaking. So for the two of us to work together and say, okay, well, how do I get her to those emotional places? I actually needed to bring in her family, which I think is also really important when you're talking about like including people who might be less independent in the world, like might just need more support in the world, that if you do that, you can actually kind of spread out the conversation, and there might be people who can help you get insight into their process. So for us, Madison had she didn't have to say lines, but she had to hit some certain emotional things. And so I discussed that with her and her family ahead of the recording session. So they sort of had some strategies for like how to help her get upset, which was to like pretend we were having a shot, you know, like just with my finger. I was like, did this, and she had a response to that. Also, she had to sing, there's a ringtone in the film, and it's like the emotional apex of her connecting is to sing this ringtone. And so I was like, oh, can she sing the ringtone? She totally could sing the ringtone, because again, she's like a musical creative person, but we needed to like set it up so she would have it ahead of time. And I think, Diana, what you're saying is like this idea that you need to have a specific strategy for people is true across the range of creative people. Like they're all different and they all speak a different language almost in terms of how they understand something. And that being open to the idea that like neurodiversity is just a different layer of that difference, and you have to adapt your strategies as a creator. I just think it's good for us. It's good for us to be challenged in that way, and good for us to say like, oh, I don't quite know what to do. What an awesome moment for me to adapt as like as a director. And now stop talking.
Okay.
Diana, can you tell us about Meet the Biz and about some of your inclusive industry workshops and events? What do those entail?
I really want to distinguish that Meet the Biz is really David Zimmerman's baby. David and I worked together at Performing Arts Studio West, and Meet the Biz has partnered with Performing Arts Studio West. I do know David started Meet the Biz, I believe about 8 or 9 years ago, that offer classes to people with disabilities in the entertainment industry, and also doing workshops where he brings in people from the entertainment industry to do like a 3-hour workshop for their talk, and then they might teach afterwards. He also had that with Performing Arts Studio West, which was formed in 1998 by John Pages. We are a performing arts studio that offers acting, dance, and music classes and career management to people with artists with disabilities. Many of our artists are on the spectrum. Our actors have been cast in over 2,000 roles in film, television, theater, and commercials. So we are, one of my positions is the diversity and disability inclusion consultant. So we're still out there in the industry advocating for diverse and the casting of actors with all actors with disabilities. And again, making sure if you're looking for an actor on the spectrum, cast the actor on the spectrum. And my job as an acting coach, my primary job is to make sure the actors are ready, because it is a skill. So it's not about just showing up and showing up and being ready. Dani does what she does so brilliantly because she's talented. Right? I mean, I know Dani; she's brilliant. But Dani does what she does so brilliantly because she has the skills and abilities to do that, and that's why she runs her own company, because she has the skills. So if one of our actors from me up to the U.S., if they're calling someone in to read for Erica's film, we want, it's important for us that they be ready. They know what a cold reading is. They know what, action, what the film terminology is, similar to what Joey did, so that when they are on set, they're there to do their job because they know their stuff. And they're trained actors who know what to do when they're on set. And that is the main goal, is to get people ready to work professionally in the entertainment industry.
I say a few things about David.
Yes,
Go
please
ahead.
do, because David's amazing. He's a casting. Yes, talk about David.
And again, I always go back to this. It's about creating opportunities. And so David and I have been friends for years. And he wanted to use our facility in Burbank. And he was having to meet the biz, I think once a week at the time, or whatever. And he said to you, would you be able to let us use the studio? I said, yeah, sure. He said, what's it going to cost? I said, it's for free, but you have to do one thing. You have to hire one of our students on the spectrum to be there and help you out, and then we'll be fine with that. And from that, every time I hired him to cast, I would always make sure he would hire somebody from the workshop that was being trained. And from that, he cast, I think, 3 or 4 commercials for me. And he cast Carol of the Bells, as well as a movie called Spud. And Meet the Biz is fantastic. I think I'm doing one for you guys very soon, right? I think I'm.
Yes, you are. Yeah, you are. Yeah, we're luckily, but we're still open. For no, so yes, you are, Joey. I'm not sure when, but you are.
But David's a great guy, and I love the way he works. I love the way he deals with all our folks. But he's a special human being.
And David really cares. I mean, the thing that makes me about David too is he really cares. And you can see it in the passion he has.
And he cries very easily. He's very sensitive.
Yes, but I just, like I said, I feel as much as I'm passionate, this Meet the Biz is David's baby, so I feel he should talk about his baby, but as his friend, I'm so proud to know him and his compassion and commitment as, my boss, John. I mean, they're the 2 great guys who are both really committed, and the combination of the 2 organizations, Meet the Biz and Performing Arts Studio West, has been a really perfect marriage of inclusion.
When are you going to come work for
I
me?
get the impression.
Me? Who, me?
There we go.
Me? Well, we anytime to direct, ask anytime, Joey, give me a call.
I'll find you something. I'm going to find something for you.
I love it.
I get the impression all of you are quite passionate about this subject and are more than willing to make labors of love to ensure that this goes on. Am I missing anybody there?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going on.
Yeah,
Well, I just want to add, I just really want to add with Diane Elizabeth, what she was saying is that she invited me to, let me just hold on, let me spotlight. So what's so special about Elizabeth Jordan? She's definitely a very nice lady, and especially I was invited to do an animation session, teaching animation session at the Meet the Biz. When I teach the session, there's some really good students that came to the workshop, and one of the students was Austin Vance. He's currently in my Saturday session.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. Remember Austin Vance, Diana?
Yeah. Oh no, Austin is great. But I want to say this to your point of the passion, Gary, is that I believe that the medium of storytelling, whether it's film, animation, television, is a celebration of our culture. And when I was growing up, I didn't see a lot of representation of people with disabilities, and I felt very different. And sometimes when I saw a person with a disability, didn't have that person that had a disability, I remember the first time I saw Jerry Jewell. My disability is cerebral palsy. I remember the first time I saw Jerry Jewell on The Facts of Life. I thought, actually, I take that back. It was another show she was on PBS. I can't remember. But I remember reading in the TV guide that the character had cerebral palsy, and it was Jerry Jewell. And I saw this actress who had a disability and had cerebral palsy just like me. And that did something for me. It did something for me, and it told me that I could be an actor too. And I think it's very important that we see that our mediums of storytelling, whether it's film, TV, web series, reflect the global diversity of who we are. And people with disabilities are 25% of the population, about one of these 25%, and that's so diverse. You know, it's people on the spectrum, the people who have cerebral palsy, people who may be less visible. It's so diverse, and the medium of storytelling is a great way to celebrate that diversity. And I'm very passionate, no matter what side of the camera I'm on, to celebrating that.
Yes,
Excellent
we all
point.
need heroes. We all need heroes. Heroes of people of all abilities, including autism.
So to that exact what we're talking about right now, what Diana and Dani have said. 2016, there was a big boycott of the Oscars over diversity, but it was not really about people that we're talking about right now. It was more diversity of color and sex. Do you see the industry improving so far, or recently, and what's it going to take to get more happening in terms of finding leads or focus of stories on characters of autism and disabilities?
It is getting better. Again?
I think, you know, as I had mentioned before, this delivering jobs, that's what that was all about. It was I think it's a 1 minute or 45-second PSA, and basically it was what the world would be like if people that are neurodiverse would be in different positions. And if you look at the advertising, it's starting to change quite a bit, but they still have a long way to go. But as I said before, I think the doors are opening. I mean, just the idea that because that's in front of the camera, that they hired, when they did their production, it was at 20th Century Fox, it was a union shoot, and they said, well, if we're gonna do this, we should walk the walk and hire crew members. Where can we find them? And that's when Gail Williamson introduced them to myself to them. And before you know it, we had 6 working that day, getting paid, you know, the whatever the scale is, union scale, but being on that lot, it was the happiest set that you've ever seen. Being on that lot, producers came around and wanted to know, oh, what was going on here? Oh, look at this. People are doing jobs. They were in like key positions. They were grip, electric, doing all this stuff, and the actors. So it was a great visual thing. And I think it's the movement that's going on. I mean, it's a big campaign, and they're going to continue to do that. Is that my sound?
I think it is, but we'll get past it.
Can I make
Erica, go ahead.
There's one thing I would like to say. This is why I started Danimation Entertainment. And my goal for Danimation Entertainment is to have people of all abilities, including autism, to be part of the animation industry. And yes, we do need representation. Like, not only when it comes to like acting roles and creators roles, but also like even fictional characters, and even the fictional characters too with autism being played by autistic actors.
Mm-hmm.
Erica?
That's great. I love that, Danny. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I love that question, like, and talking about the Oscars and talking about inclusion. I feel like disability has frequently been left behind as an issue of inclusion. Like, and I love the disability community and how they just are always pointing themselves out now. And there are a lot of amazing people making strides in the disability representation. I'm feeling like, do you guys hear my voice?
We're hearing an
kinda
echo,
strange.
Erica.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's echoing.
Yeah, and I think, okay, cool. Sometimes that's like,
Yeah.
there's another phone with a mute, but it sounds better now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do feel like there's a lot of disabled activists and filmmakers and storytellers who are like Dani, who are changing things, like Diana, who are changing things. And I have strong feeling that, oh my God, I'm sorry, this echo is so stupid.
Is there a phone on near you?
Hang on.
Lower left.
So I think this idea that, so I have two thoughts on this. The first thought is that it's a lot easier as a writer, and my role is writer-director on most of the things that I create. I think it's a lot easier to write about people with disabilities if you know people with disabilities. And I think that's a really important thing for the whole industry to take into consideration. Like, we all become better when we interact with each other. So that's just overall. And then the second thing is that the stories that come out of the disability community are so powerful, and they're just any human story. But I think the thing about them is that they're very fresh, but a lot of times and they've been hidden behind the door of institutionalization, specialization, marginalization. And if you decide to get to know each other, you open up those doors and you can tell their stories. And that is what I think is going to change our industry, is listening to each other. Okay, sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Danny, you might want to mute Diana when she's not talking on both of her things, because I think that's where we're getting the double reflection there.
There's like, yeah. Can I, well,
Yes.
Chime in, Bobby.
okay, well, I want to say that, like, we have, oh, okay.
Is she muted?
She's muted.
Diane's muted?
On,
Yeah,
She
we're
doesn't
still
have
getting
an audio.
feedback.
She is mute. She is mute.
Okay.
go, Bobby, go.
Okay. I mean, I guess I would want to say is that there are 2 Pixar shorts right now that have to deal with autism. So that is an indication of things are changing. Who would have thought there would have been 2 in 1 year? And so what I think it will take is also companies like Pixar who will take a chance on these stories. So am I getting feedback as well?
I don't think
Little
so.
bit.
I think it's Danny, can you mute Diana's
Yes.
both of her feeds? Both of them.
I did. Let me see if I can mute for video. Let me stop for video.
Oh,
There you go.
Okay.
Go.
No.
Are we good?
Try
Talk,
again.
Diana. Talk, Bobby. Talk.
Give it a try.
Okay. Well, I think with the way the industry is, the film industry and the animation industry, it's an indication is that Pixar has 2. Wow, do you hear the feedback? I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like funky.
Guys, should we restart this Zoom and try?
Hold on. Let me see if I can mute everybody. It's my bad.
Okay.
Hold on. Unmute you. Oh, can you please hold on a second. Let me just pause the recording. Could you please? Okay, let's start again.
Can I get the video back, please?
I'm still hearing you. I need to mute you.
Oh.
Continue. Now you're good.
Okay. Well, with the film industry and the movie industry the way it is, I think things will change when there are good stories to be told, and when studios are willing to give those stories a chance. As you see with Pixar, we have two stories that are have autism-related characters and storylines, and a studio that's willing to back that up, and so and creators that have a passion to do that. I think as long as you have that, you will have more stories coming from a very vast, diverse storytelling point of view. And I hope that I'm almost certain that there are people on the spectrum at Pixar right now that haven't been diagnosed all across the animation industry. So I think it's going to take us to tell our stories, and it's going to take our allies to back us up, to let us tell them.
That is true, Bobby. That is true, Bobby. Let me just unmute everybody.
So everybody can hear me right now, yes?
I can, yes.
All right, good. Hey, we've got a significant
So
amount.
I can't see anything.
Hold on. Let me just ask you
I
for
can stay muted by any video.
Diana, hold on for a second.
Yeah, we're good.
Yay.
Okay.
And Erica's back.
Yes, sorry.
So we have a significant amount of fans who are autistic, who come to the conventions and the like. I mean, the audience is large. Roger Craig Smith, the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog, he really wanted to be here today. He and I were having lunch one day, and he was talking about the really large amount of fans that he has on Twitter and such, who are very attracted to Sonic and the like. Can you talk about your experiences with some of the fans and what they've liked and what they've asked for?
Okay. When it comes to the fans, they come into Danimation Entertainment. Okay, so let me see if I could be able to spotlight myself. Let me spotlight me.
You're in the spotlight.
Yeah, you're in the spotlight.
Sorry about that. Okay. So as I travel around the country teaching animation, not only I teach animation, but I also do what's called public speaking engagements. I travel around to different autism events, such as like Fred conferences, such as the Fred conference.
Okay.
What's the question again?
Talk a little bit about the fans.
I want you
and the
Fans.
talk about the fans and what you're
Fans.
hearing from them, and how you what they're expecting, what they'd like to see.
They always expect me and like to see animation work that I do through Danimation Entertainment. Not only they really wanted to see the work, but also would like to attend the Danimation Entertainment camps, but I also call it, under the label, call it Dani Academy. And with
I think they're talking about the fans for Sonic.
Oh, fans for Sonic, you're right.
No. I'm not talking about fans for Sonic. I'm talking about fans at conventions, fans that you interact with. I'm looking for what kind of content are the autistic fans looking for? What attracts them? What do they find most appealing about the work you do or the work that's coming?
The autistic fans not only wanted to see my animation work and what I do, but also my teaching animation camps. But most of all, me.
Yeah.
Most of all, me, because it's honest, it's true. I'm not saying it because I'm arrogant. I'm saying it is because they want me.
Awesome.
Own it.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about the Pixar crowd? What happens when you're at a convention? What do you encounter?
I think Bobby should answer this question. Bobby has the most convention experience out of all of us.
Well, okay, I'm at the San Diego Comic-Con, but that's mainly with my own personal work.
Did we lose Bobby?
Did we?
Am I the only one that's unfrozen?
Yeah,
No,
I have got him.
You can look
Can
frozen.
you hear me?
I can
Yeah.
hear you.
I can hear you,
Oh,
Bobby.
Okay.
Start over though.
Okay.
Start over.
Okay. Well, the fans that come to my booth are usually from San Diego Comic-Con, and I have my comic. But you're specifically asking for autistic fans that come up and ask, and what they tend to they've been talking about Float mainly, and they like seeing themselves up there. They like seeing the way their parents reacted to it and how much the story has resonated with them, and they would want to see more of characters that represent them up on the screen. So that's what usually they come up with to me with.
Yeah, I think on Twitter is where I feel like I've met most of the Loop fans who are autistic, and honestly, I was really scared initially when Loop came out because it does feature an autistic character, and I am not, I'm not autistic. So my greatest fear was that we had done a disservice to people's experience, right? That would feel really bad. And so I was on Twitter, kind of, but people were like, you should go to Twitter because that is where the fan base for a lot of Pixar films has conversations, and particularly the autistic fan base. And so I went with a little trepidation, but honestly, like, it's been amazing. I feel like that the friends I've made from the autistic community and the people's responses to Loop has been really, really powerful. And a lot of it, like what Bobby's saying, like what Dani's saying, is there's a real thirst for seeing yourself in the film. And actually also Diana, like the first time you saw Jerry Jewell, people have kind of been talking about Loop as though it was the first time they saw themselves in an animated film. Like, that was something so exciting to hear, because that was our main goal, was just to feel like it had a sense of honesty, and it truly represented two different points of view with a lot of like generosity and care for both of those points of view and how they experience the world. So I really love, one thing I do love about autistic fans though, is that there's kind of this like diving into the details, like being able to really, really think about the specificity. They kind of, sometimes their reviews are these very long reviews that like point out everything that you did. And honestly, as an artist, you're like, yeah, like reading those reviews because they paid so much attention. And, like, we paid a lot of attention to trying to get those details in there. And so to know that someone watched it so closely is really, really powerful. And then to know that they responded to it, they felt seen, they enjoyed that, and that they want more, like, it just feels really, really great. So I think they're awesome fans. I'm super into the autistic fan community.
Yeah.
So,
And I'd also like to add to that another thing that is unusual about both Float and Loop is that they feature characters of color. And that was a big deal when we made both Float. Float features the first Filipino-American characters from a Pixar film. And then Loop, Renee is a mixed race character, and Marcus is a kid of color. And being able to connect with people about not only the fact that this is an autism related short or features an actress that has autism or is autistic, it was also showing it's not a stereotypical young white male that is autistic. So that was also a big thing for us, is trying to expand representation in that way as well.
Yay, it's always really great. Like
I said, say something about
Diana, let me just say something first, Diana. So what I'm saying, we really need more representation, especially in animation, for not only of people of color, but also people on the autism spectrum.
Yep.
If nobody minds a quick story, I used to work at Disney for about a decade, and the operator would always send all of the fan calls to me. And there were a lot of them that were on the spectrum in one way or another. And we had one named Philip that I truly enjoyed, who would call me if he got the chance every day to talk about Disney TV shows. And we had a show called Disney's House of Mouse that was in the opening minute of the title sequence. There were 132 characters that came running through the screen, and he memorized all 132 on the first viewing.
Wow.
And
Wow.
Wow.
I was constantly having to put together sizzle reels for different characters and the like, and we'd have requests that I'd need to go in and do, and it would be like, we need Goofy and his car, or Donald holding a bomb, and I could call Philip and go, Philip, what episode will we have Goofy in a car? And he could, episode 23, 16 minutes in, Goofy is parking his car in a parking lot. It was amazing. I love Philip. He lives in New York and in Florida, and he knows the name of everyone that works at Disney World and Disneyland by heart. He's amazing. So
Wow.
some of these kids, they're fantastic that way.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
So with the camps that I do in the summer, I do them all over New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Florida, Arkansas, California. And I have 50 kids in each camp on the autism spectrum, and I get to interview them. And one of the questions I always ask is, if you were a superhero, who would it be and what would your power be? And they are so fascinated with these characters. And I'm interviewing probably 700 kids over the course of the summer, and it's my favorite part of it. But their fascination with animation and anime and whatever, what is the big one? The Pokemon was like, it's like crazy with all these guys. And but they can't get enough of it. And I think there should be a superhero that is neurodiverse. Have they started developing that?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I will check with DC this week.
yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah.
I think Diana had something to say a little bit back. Can we get to her?
Let's see if I can say something. Let's see if I can go get her.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So no, I just wanted to piggyback on what everyone said, and I'm so glad that the diversity of having characters of color is really important. And the other thing I wanted to say when it comes to piggybacking, when you said about the obstacles and inclusion, that disability is a part of that. It's often separated, but it's the intersectionality of disability. So when you're talking about diversity in terms of race, you're still talking about disability. If you're talking about disability in terms of if you're talking about diversity in terms of the LGBTQI community, that still includes disability. So you can't, disability become up and become the afterthought in the diversity conversation. It really is, we all have multiple identities. So I think we need to make sure that when we're having those hopefully diversity conversations, that we're recognizing that disability is an intersectional part of all those conversations.
Yes.
Erica?
I just wanted to clap. Yes.
What advice do you all have for any autistic people trying to get into pursuing a career in entertainment?
So basically, what the hint is, if any people who wanted to enter the media and entertainment industry, it always start from the heart. I'm always passionate. For me, I'm always passionate with animation, and I use the power of the heart and the love of animation as a way to help me start with my animation company. If people with autism wanted to be in the media and entertainment industry, it always takes a commitment. It always takes heart. It's not just about thinking, I want to be an actor or something like that. It's going to take a little while, and it's a little difficult to join in and a little tedious, but believe it or not, it's not impossible. You just have to keep on going. Don't give up. That's the good thing about if you want to be entered in the industry. If you get rejected, don't give up. Also, don't fear failure. It's okay to fail. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody fails. That's what I do with Danimation Entertainment. There's some backfires and failures sometimes, but I get up and I keep on going. Everybody in the animation industry can get talented. Keep going. That's all you have to do. Be open-minded. Be open-minded. It's the most important thing. And in other words, think outside the box.
You know what, Danny? I quit. I'm out of here now.
Really?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think it's also important to define your own success. Wait, hang on.
We hear you, Diana.
Okay. I think it's important to define what success means for you. Danny runs her own company, that's great. Not everyone has to run their own company. There's nothing wrong with that, but not everyone has to run their own company. So I think, what is your personal definition of success? You know, it may be having a couple sources of income, but I think for each individual artist, defining what success means to you, and then seeking a really good support team and helping you build that success.
That's great.
Anyone else?
I mean,
I would say, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bobby.
To jump on what they were saying is that, yeah, I myself have been, in my career, have been, oh, geez.
Danny, mute everybody for a moment. Let Bobby answer.
Everybody.
Okay, so like.
Go ahead.
Okay, so jumping off of what Danny said, I myself have come by rejection several times. It took me several times to get into Pixar. It took me several times to get into animation. I agree with their animation going forward. I agree with their and also you should also if you're wanting to tell a story, it doesn't have to be film. It could just be comics. What's great about comics is that it could just be you. You could, with a pencil and paper, you could write your own stories and share it with the world. Especially with online now, you could just do that. And the world needs more stories, and it needs different perspectives. So you could be that person. You could be the one writing and telling your stories that connects to the world. You don't have to be at Pixar. You don't have to be at the top studio right now. You could work towards it, but you don't have to be there right now.
Krissy?
Yeah, I think everyone sort of all the advice is great too. I think the one thing I would add is just sort of tagging on to what Danny said is that getting great at your craft takes practice. Almost none of us get it right the first time, and those people that do, well, bless them. That's not me, and that's probably not a lot of people. I think no matter what your craft is, whether it's sound, whether it's animation, whether it's writing, whether it's production design, there's so many different ways to be involved in the business. I think you just have to be patient with yourself. You have to practice. You have to get good at it. It takes many, many years of trial and error before anyone masters anything. And so I think just keep going. Don't give up if you don't get it right, the first or second time.
I think it's really important that you practice your craft. If it's an actor, get in acting classes, filmmaking classes. That's what, some of the kids that come to us have never made a film before, and now they're making films. And in the advent of, I don't know if you guys have one of these, but it's an iPhone. You can make films on a phone now. You can edit them. It's incredible what you can do. And between the different platforms like YouTube and whatever the other ones are. I'm a little technically challenged, but there's so much that you can do. I wish that I had this, 25, 30 years ago, that I'd be able to just make a movie with a phone. But, it's finding out what you want to do and being in the right place to teach you what that is and get as much experience as you can with that to learn your craft.
Great.
That's it. I'm done.
Anything we haven't talked about that everybody wanted to go through with?
Okay. So maybe we could just talk about, for anybody who's interested. So for anyone who's interested in viewing my animation or go to the animation classes, you can find me under www.danimationentertainment.com. And plus, you can also find me on Facebook under Dani Bowman or at Danimation Entertainment, or find me on Instagram.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
Anybody else got ways people can contact you or find you and follow you?
There's no like little listing underneath us?
It says your name and your phone number, and now everybody will be calling you tomorrow.
Yeah, right?
With me at inclusionfilms.com, you can find out more about the company. The film that we made, that it ended up winning the San Diego International Film Festival for Best Audience Choice for Best Feature Film. It was released March 6th. It's called Carol of the Bells, and we're quite proud of it. Like I said, 70% of the crew were folks that we trained, and it was about a young woman with Down syndrome. RJ Mitty was in it, and the gal you were talking about. This is terrible. My mind is going.
Is it Jamie or Jamie?
No. That The Facts of Life.
Oh, Jerry Jewell.
Jerry Jewell was in the film, and it was she had a scene with RJ Mitty, and she said, and it was through David. She said, "I'll play the role, but I want to be a nun." I said, "I don't care. She could be a truck driver. I don't care. As long as she's going to do it, I'm fine with it." But it's really a special film, and it's on Prime and other platforms now.
RJ Mitty's on it?
RJ Mitty was fantastic. Yeah.
Wow. Check this out.
Yeah.
Diana?
A lot of fun.
Yes, I'm going to give, you can go to meetthebiz.com to find David, PAStudioWest.com for me at Studio West. And for me, I'm at DianaElizabethJordan.com. So.
Bobby, Krissy, Erica, anybody?
Well, I'll just say that you can find both Float and Loop on Disney Plus streaming. There's a week free trial if you don't want to sign up for the subscription, but you can watch both Float and Loop and all the other Spark shorts on Disney Plus.
And they are terrific.
That's a producer right there.
Yeah, thank you.
That's my job.
Do the shilling.
I'm gonna say it right now. We're all watching stuff. We're all binging right and left. But sometimes I just sit and pick a spot and start searching. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, my daughter and I were on Disney Plus. She's 20. She's not 6 or anything. And we hit on those shorts and we watched all of them. They were really great. They were really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I could be reached at Bobby Rubio at Instagram, and that's pretty much where you can find me.
All right.
And I'm Erica at Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, I feel like I love following Bobby. So I'll probably start following all of you before the end of this. I probably already have. So.
Just one last thing. Have you guys heard of AOL?
Yeah.
My parents
Still use it.
How's your MySpace page, Joey?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I want to say thank you to Dani Bowman, Krissy Cababa, Diana Elizabeth Jordan, Bobby Rubio, Joey Travolta, Erica Milsom, and Emily Clark, who put all this together and did a great job for us all.
Hey, Emily.
Hard job, good cause. Thank you, Emily.
Yay,
and,
thank you, Emily.
And thanks to WonderCon at Home for letting us do what we were going to do in Anaheim a couple weeks ago.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
And